The iPhone 11, the iPhone 11 Pro, the iPhone 11 Pro Max. These are Apple's iPhones for 2019. Are any of them for you? Let's find out. Now let's put this in perspective. What is Apple doing with iPhones right now? Every year they have a new iPhone. Now we're pushing into all these new technologies. Some of them are not fully here yet, and Apple's looking at practical things. I'm going to make this easy and say that of all three iPhones, you're really looking at one iPhone 11 in different variations. And the Pro and Pro Max are the same with different screen sizes. So the difference between the Pro and the 11 really come down to steel or aluminum, and do you go with 2 cameras or 3? The iPhones have speedier processors, they have better battery life, and they come in different colors. But really this year Apple's making the big feature all about the camera. Here, take a look. Okay, now you're looking through the iPhone 11 Pro Max, and I'm holding the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 11 Pro. Now all of these phones have a 12 megapixel wide angle, which is what you're looking at now, which is kind of like the standard camera. But they also add ultra wide, which expands out the view, like significantly. This is kind of a specialty shot. You don't have to play with it to get the right framing. Both of those have that, but only the Pro phones have telephoto, which gets super close, 2x optical zoom. That's something that I use all the time, but you have to pay up for that. You may not need telephoto, but that's what the Pro is leveraging. Give me that phone back. The front-facing cameras on all of the iPhone 11 models are the same, and they're better than last year's XS and XR models. They're 12 megapixel cameras, and they're wider so you can fit more people into a shot, which is key. That's been on other phones too. And yes, there's also the slow-fi thing, slow-mo, selfie, whatever you want to call this. It's not a photo mode like live photo. Instead, what you're enabling is slow-motion video recording on the front-facing camera. I wouldn't use it all that much. It's kind of like this year's Animoji, and you know what? My kids really like playing with it. They basically recorded minutes of sticking their tongues out. The photos I've taken on the 11 and 11 Pro so far look really good, but Apple's photo quality has already been great over the last few years. You're going to notice it most with maybe things like Smart HDR, in extreme lighting conditions, or of course with that extra ultra wide angle camera. The camera app has changed, and you can see here that when you are zooming in more, it includes some of the stuff from the other camera lenses to show you what you might be missing. So it's framing in the square, but then it's saying, hey, you might want to pull back. It's like a viewfinder. Portrait mode is back. You can also zoom in and out. And there's a new mode called High Key Light Mono that takes that photo and overlays it on a white background in black and white. The iPhone 11 has 2 cameras, the wide and the ultra wide, but it's missing the telephoto. You could zoom in further, but that's digital zoom, which isn't always as high quality, but sometimes is okay. And in portrait mode, it's there, but it's only available in one level of zoom, wide. It doesn't zoom into telephoto. There's also video stabilization on the iPhone 11 and on the 11 Pro models. It's better than before. I shot in 60 frames per second in 4K and tried walking around to check it out. It's not 100%, but I was using stabilization on iPhones previously. In fact, I use it to shoot at Apple events when I go into the demo room. And I think this is smoother. It still shows my footsteps, but it does seem nicer, and video in general seems great. That's always been the iPhone's strong suit. This one does seem a lot better, but keep in mind that a lot of stuff that these do, you can do on both models. There's also quick take video, where when you're in the photo mode, you can just press and hold the shutter button to take a video, to shoot in the aspect ratio of whatever you were taking a photo of. Now, I know you want to see how night mode works, but it's not quite dark enough yet. So before we get to that, let's talk about design, because people care about that. Apple makes good-looking phones regardless, but there are some differences. The iPhone 11 has a glossy glass back and an aluminum case, while the iPhone 11 Pro has a stainless steel case and a frosted glass back. That's like last year when the iPhone XR had an aluminum case and the XS had a steel one. It's kind of a luxury upgrade here. I have two of the most controversial colors, the greens. This green on the 11 kind of looks like a 60s swimming pool, like an aqua turquoise. It's kind of funky. While the midnight green on the 11 Pro has this industrial outdoorsman type look. And the 3 camera array is a little bit intimidating. The whole thing has I don't know if it's a Leica look or a kind of like a futuristic dystopian iPhone look, while this one looks a little more friendly. But why couldn't these dovetail? Why couldn't this be colorful and pastel, and why couldn't this be metallic? That's the way it is in iPhone land. The iPhone 11 has the same LCD display as the iPhone XR, and it looks a lot better than you think. It's perfectly fine. But the iPhone 11 Pro has an OLED display that's higher resolution and is also higher contrast ratio this year and brighter. It's just starting to become dark enough for night mode. This isn't even quite fully dark enough yet. But come with me and I'll show you how night mode works. Night mode kicks in automatically when it gets dark enough, and you can tell because there's a little icon here, and it tells you the average length of the exposure when using it. If it gets darker, that'll increase. If I take a photo right now, it takes a little bit of time for it to process, but then you can see that it really does a lot better than the previous iPhones ever did. Night mode works in telephoto and in wide, but when you go to ultra wide, there is no night mode. Photos still look nice, but they're not going to kick in with that same night vision that you would get in the other modes. So I have a bunch of feelings about night mode so far. I think it's a great overdue feature on the iPhone, and a lot of other competing phones have been adding this feature. But keep in mind, the added exposure time is something you have to get used to. In addition, the photos that are taken are going to produce some unusual processing effects. Some photos look spectacular, others look weirdly dramatic. The colors are very saturated, and at times it can look like night is day. And resolution on these photos can really vary. They're not going to look as crisp as a full daylight photo in all instances. Sometimes you may want to turn it off completely. I've only been using it for a handful of days, and I'm glad it's there, but night mode is not the cure-all for everything. There's no night mode in video, but Apple's camera improvements for video recording do look great in lower light conditions. Ultra wide, however, doesn't pick up quite as many details in lower light as the wide and telephoto modes. Okay guys, some real talk. So I haven't even used these phones for more than a week, really less than a week, and there's only so much you can observe. I think these are better phones, and the fact that Apple's focusing on better battery life is great. But there are some things I would have liked. Like for instance, you can only get a larger charger or 18-watt charger with the Pro phone. It doesn't come with the iPhone 11, and there's no USB-C. And you can't charge things via the back, which is nice for, let's say, a watch, which Samsung does, which you can't do yet on this. I don't really care much about 5G yet because I just like my own cellular connection to work better on LTE, which, thanks to the way the nation's connectivity works, is not always the case with my commute. But hopefully that stuff will get fixed. We'll see. We'll see how that pans out. And you don't even know next year if Apple's going to be releasing a 5G iPhone, and if they do, how much that would cost. Right now, Apple's focused on some pretty commodity updates. Faster, better battery life, better camera. Would I update to this? I mean, most people don't update their phones every year, or every 2 years, or every 3 years. A lot of people I know in my family and others are updating like every 4 years. So you're really going to wait to spend money on a phone. And Apple's at least acknowledging that not everybody's going to be buying a $1,000 phone. And they're pointing more to the $700 phone, which is still expensive, but at least it's not a $1,000 phone. And it's $50 less than what the XR was. So there's a little bit of progress. I'd still like to see a sequel to the iPhone SE. Who knows if that's ever going to happen. In the meantime, if you've had a phone like an iPhone 6S or a 7, this is a really nice update. And if you're a photographer who wants something where you can look at all of the color detail, and especially at night, the OLED's going to pay off. But also you may want to wait and see what else is coming. These are not necessary updates, they're good updates. And that's the story of the iPhone in 2019. Are you kidding me? I've been working on this, I haven't seen my kids. I've been in Brooklyn, I got to commute back to New Jersey, which is like 2 rivers. They really like taking slow-mo selfies. That's what most slow-mo selfies are gonna be. I mean, they're fine. Slow-mo is cool. But someday, someday, after all the technology events end, I'll see my family again, and it will be wonderful.